A very good morning to you all, our Cament TV viewer. This is a breakfast show, a show that comes to your screens every morning from 07 hours to 09 hours, where we bring you nothing but the best of what is happening around. We get to discuss a lot of important topics with regards to policy issues, matters of concern, community stories, and everything that makes headline in our news. And this morning, I am your host, Prudence Chota. I will take you through to the next about an hour and 30 minutes, where we will be discussing a lot of important aspects. Remember that this program is being streamed live on our Facebook platform. If at all you are leaving your home, driving for work, you can still watch the breakfast show. We can still get to interact. You can send us those messages on our Facebook platform, as well as call to make those submissions and contributions with regards to the topics of discussion that we will be having this morning. The numbers that are on the screen are the ones that you have to call, and we will get to hear what you have to say. Remember, the policy issues that are happening in our country and all the solutions that are attached to them are with you, the viewer out there. Your voice can still be heard by policymakers if you call and make your submissions and contributions on this program. Even as we go to look at what the doctors have for us this morning, remember to keep health, exercise. If you can't do it in the morning, do it in the evening before going for bed. But if you can, in the morning while you wake up, you can just do a little bit of jogging before you take a bath and go for work. It is very important to be healthy, because a healthy nation relies on a healthy people. If you are not in good health, you cannot do your daily activities. You cannot positively contribute to the development of the country. That's why we exercise, ensure that we keep ourselves fit. So let's do that. If at all we are not doing that, but also let's get to hear what the doctors have to say this morning. It is very important to have body checks once in a while. Even if you have no problem, it is just important for you. You don't feel any illness in your body, you don't feel any pain. It's just important once in a while you just visit the health facility and just have a checkup to ensure that we don't hear suddenly issues of collapsing and someone dies, even without giving a sign to our beloved ones that this might happen. We know death is a mystery, but other things can be avoided if we do the right thing. So before I preempt myself, let's get to hear what the doctors have to say this morning on the Doctor's Corner. Stay tuned to Cament TV.
Good morning. My name is Dr. Rafat Basit Masa. I'm coming from Medical Women's Association of Zambia, MWAZ, and I'm from University Teaching Hospital. I'm working in Department of Surgery. We have been talking about a very exciting topic, that's burns. We've talked about introduction of burns, we've talked about causes of burns, we've talked about symptoms of burns, we've talked about treatment of burns. This whole week we've been talking about also complications of burns. Today we're going to talk about prevention of burns. Remember, we have talked about burns, what causes burns. Remember, we talked about things that cause burns are hot water, oil, porridge. Then you can have acids, you can have alkalines, you can have electricity, you can have so many chemicals, you can have so many things that causes burns. And these burns are quite devastating, because it totally changes the life of a person. So we talked about also the symptoms. We said the burns are very painful, they become red, there is loss of skin. So we also talked about types of burns. We talked about first degree, we talked about second degree, and we talked about third degree. We talked about first degree, which is more of superficial burns. They can be handled quite well with just ointments and a bit of cleaning around. But second degree burns are slightly deeper than the first degree burns, and they need to be cleaned under supervision. So you find that they are also very painful, and they also cause you to not to move a part of your body because you are so much in pain. So it's also something very, very difficult and devastating. Then we also talked about third-degree burn, which are the most devastating burns because they burn your organ can be burned, your bones can be burned, your muscles can be burned, you can be really burnt deeply. And those burns actually have no pain because you have lost all the sensation in that area of your body. If it's a very big area, so it means you have lost sensation in that whole part of your body. So you find that that causes you to actually lose a lot of fluids. You find that your kidney starts to fail, your heart starts to dysfunction, you lose a lot of blood, you become very dehydrated. So all these factors that come in as complications of burns. So in terms of prevention of burns, let's make sure that we prevent our burns. We make sure that we keep ourselves safe. When you don't have electricity, when you switch on candles, make sure the candles are kept somewhere far away. They should not be so close to you that you end up, because majority of the kind of patients we receive, they sleep in the night. You find that they have put candles in their close to them, and you find that candle falls onto the blanket gets burned together with the patient, and you find they actually get very, very severe burns, and it's so difficult and it's so devastating. Getting burnt is not a nice thing. Everyone wants to have their skin the way they are. It's not nice to get burnt and lose that beautiful face of yours. It's very, very depressing. We also have people we have majority of children getting burnt, which is a very, very sad, it's a very sad thing for us, because children are our future and they are getting burned, which is not a nice thing. So you find that majority of children are getting burnt because of they are kept with the maid, and majority accidents happen because the parents, you find the father and the mother have gone out for work and they are left with their nannies, and somehow they get burned, which is also very sad. So we have to ensure that when we're keeping children, other people's children, so please make sure that you look after them like your own child. Make sure you protect them from stoves, from electricity, from hot pots, hot oil, all these things. When you're cooking in the kitchen, tell them not to enter the kitchen until they are done with the work. This thing of putting pots and hot things on the stove and leaving that place for a little bit of time, it's already enough time for a child to go and touch that thing and burn him or herself completely. So it's something which we can prevent ourselves. Make sure in the bathtub, when you're filling hot water for a child, ensure that you see the hot water yourself, fill it with your hands, and make sure that it's not too hot, because that way you also burn the children. We've also received people who have been burnt like that. So you make sure that it also psychologically depresses you. There are a lot of people who have been burnt, great percentages. You find they are alive, but they are always depressed. They have tendency of they don't want to live anymore because they feel like they are no longer beautiful anymore, and they feel like they are different from the rest of the world. So they have started isolating themselves. They become very, very depressed, which is not a nice thing, because we all want to see each other happy. We also want to see each other healthy. Being healthy it's very happy. There's a lot of happiness of being healthy. So ensure that we protect ourselves. Your sockets, please ensure that you keep them away from children, because the electrical burns that we receive are very, very deep. They are very hard to also to treat as well, and they are also very difficult for the patient, because, for example, one area has been burned and they cannot live like a normal person. They cannot write books anymore. They cannot study. They cannot do a lot of things. That becomes very difficult. So make sure that we keep our children safe from getting burnt, because in UTH we receive so many burn patients every single day, which can easily be avoidable. And majority of these children get burnt with their nannies. It's very rare that mothers actually they get burnt with mothers. So please make sure that when we are leaving our children with nannies, we make sure we speak to them very nicely to tell them that please look after after my child and make sure that he or she does not get burnt, because getting burns, you end up spending lots and lots of time in the hospital. That's also very depressing, because you find that you are in hospital for weeks and weeks and weeks, and you know, time goes, and even after your child is fully functional, you find the child is depressed because of the huge trauma that he or she has gone through, you know. So please make sure that you protect everyone else and yourself. So our take-home message is prevent is better than getting cure. So prevent yourselves from getting burned. Prevent your little kids from getting burned. If you prevent yourself from getting burned, then you will have none of these complications. So please ensure that you look after yourselves and you look after our children. My name's Dr. Rafat Basit Masa. I'm coming from Medical Women's Association of Zambia, MWAZ. This whole week we've gone through burns. We'll be bringing you different types of exciting topics that you'll be learning from us every single day. Every day you'll be learning different beautiful things. Being happy is being healthy. Being healthy is being happy. So make sure that we all live healthy and happy. Please keep watching Cament, because it will bring you different topics with different complications, different preventions, and different ways of looking into it. Thank you very much.
There you have it. That was the doctor's corner this morning, and we were, of course, the doctor, not me, was discussing how to prevent burns this rain season. And of course, when we got towards the cold season, and of course rain season, because it's somehow slightly cold, that's when we see a lot of burns around. But we can prevent even that, because it has really a negative impact on one's body. Imagine burning your face as a lady. It makes you lose your confidence, or even just your arm. And you know, ladies, we are very particular with the way we look and stuff like that. But this can be prevented, including our children. Sometimes they get burnt, and when they grow up, they look at themselves. They feel as if maybe my parents did not do enough to protect me from being disfigured. Because when you get burns, somehow you begin to get, you begin to feel as if there's just something wrong about your body. But that can be prevented if at all you follow what the doctor was explaining on this program. So this is the Doctor's Corner on Cament TV, and for our sponsors out there, it will ensure that we continue having the doctor speak on the breakfast show. Let's get to sponsor that segment in the breakfast show, so that the doctors can continue to keep coming and talk about several illnesses. A lot of topics have been discussed by the doctors on this breakfast show that can help us live a healthier life. So let's get to continue hearing what the doctors have to say, and of course visiting our health facilities to ensure that we are in good shape. Let's now move on to look at how is it that we are performing as a country with regards to our local currency against other major convertibles. How is the Zambian kwacha this morning performing against other major convertibles? Pardon me. There you have it. That is the money market for this morning. The Zambian kwacha there against the United States dollar is buying at 15 kwacha 97 ingwe and selling at 16 kwacha 29 ingwe. The Zambian kwacha against the Great British Pound is buying at 18 kwacha 53 ingwe and selling at 18 kwacha 89 ingwe. The Zambian kwacha against the euro is buying at 16 kwacha and selling at 16 kwacha 82 ingwe. The Zambian kwacha against the South African rand is buying at 0.89 ingwe and selling at 0.91 ingwe. That is the money market for this morning. Local currency against the United States dollar, that is the kwacha. We've seen it depreciate a little bit in the past few days by some cents. I think but that is not something to worry about. At least we are in the range of 15 kwacha to 16 kwacha, and our local currency has been there for quite some time, and this is a positive sentiment. And of course, yesterday we did also see the Zambia Statistical Agency Interim Statistician General, Mr. Mulenga Musepa, announce that the country's inflation rate had slowed a little bit down to 9.7% from 9.9% recorded in September, and this was attributed to the price reduction in non-food items such as clothing, motor vehicles, for those who are purchasing motor vehicles and stuff like this. And if you look at the motor vehicle, maybe this can be also attributed to the fact that our local currency has been performing better against other major convertibles. So anything that happens in the economy, one way or another, has an impact on other sectors. So we've seen our local currency being quite stable, and this can also be seen because it has been reflected to the other sector, which is the country's inflation rate. It moved a little bit down, it moved a little bit up to 9.9% in September, but for October we've seen it move slightly down to 9.8%, a reduction of 0.2 percentage point there, and this has been attributed to price movement in non-food items, among other things. So we hope that our local currency will continue to stabilize, our inflation will continue to be where it is, our gross domestic product, GDP, will equally continue to be where we expect it to be, so that a lot of things can begin to favor the Zambian people, the local people, especially us, the consumers, because in the end, the consumer are the ones who have to bear the cost. The producers will only say, okay, because power has been increased, because electricity, fuel, and stuff like that has been increased, I'm also going to increase my product. But the last person, who are the consumers, us who are not producing, are the ones mostly who get affected. But if we are seeing a stable currency, we are seeing a lower inflation rate, we are seeing our GDP growing and stuff like that, we will be in the right trajectory to economic recovery. This is what we are all looking towards. And yeah, the government of the United Party for National Development has been trying to do its best in that area to ensure that we have some stability, which others, of course, have argued to say it is not reflecting, but on paper only. That's where we are seeing things happening. But out there, things are not happening as the cost of living still remains high, and some people are not affording a meal. I'm not sure about that, but we have seen in some areas where people are complaining over the high cost of living. But we wish all the best to the UPND administration, even as they will work on ensuring that they stabilize our economy. As a Zambian citizen, as a politician out there, the best you can wish for the country is not for the current administration to fail, because when they fail, everyone is affected. Even when they fail, when you become the next president, you will find that things will really be bad, such that even recovery for you as the next president will be quite difficult. So the best we can wish is put our ideas together, advise the government in the right trajectory, and see how, as a country, we can move together to ensure that we leave no one behind. Prosperity is for everyone, and it has to be reflected in the people and not failure. When this government fails, the Zambian people fail, and not a politician. Let's take that into mind. Yesterday in our news, something really sad that we covered in Kanyama, where a 2-year, 9-month-old baby girl suffering from a known condition in Lusaka's Kanyama compound has been abandoned by both her parents. A check by Cament News at the grandmother's place where the child is being taken care of found neighbors looking after the child, while the grandmother has traveled to the Copper Belt where she has a bereavement. And Dorothy Chungu, a young grandmother to the child, explained that the baby was born healthy but was later diagnosed with tuberculosis, which started to deteriorate her health. Ms. Chungu further says the mother to the child was the first to abandon her when she left her in the custody of her husband, who also later abandoned the child and has never been seen in almost a month. She has since called on relevant authorities and well-wishers to come to the aid of the family. What are we talking about? We are going to zoom into that story that made headline in our news yesterday. While others are seeking God day and night to bless them with the fruit of the womb, a 2 years, 9 months old baby of Lusaka's Kanyama compound living with a health complication not well known has been abandoned by both her parents. A check by Cament News at the child's grandmother's place where she is currently being looked after found the child in the custody of the neighbors, while the child's real grandmother has traveled to the Copper Belt to attend a bereavement. And a sister to the child's grandmother, Memory Chanda, who in this case is also a grandmother to the child, has told this reporter that the mother to the child, identified as Zipporah Mayala, was the first to abandon her and left her in the custody of her husband after they had an argument. The father to the child, identified as Jethron Mukuma, also abandoned the child and has never been seen in almost a month.
Uyu mwana banamusiya amayi bake kayanga banayambana na batate bake nabevinze ku chitabwanji kunyamuka kubotuma chefoni kuri mfana after amutumira foni nomuzati nigwirireko mwana na kukwera motoka na kuyamba hapo Suchabi ndemwe banamusiyira mwana we kumutaba ne banataba papita 1 month apatenda mu 2 months.
So mwana
ankara na bambia bake basista banga.
Ms. Chanda, when asked about the condition of the child, explained that the baby had a normal birth but was later diagnosed with tuberculosis and that she was put on medication.
Olwafiero na 8 months alifyo bunwino waina nomba mukukura olwambo kuchinja twamona fi panu kulwalirira pano mwingira muti echiba muteka ko mwafume fufine efo achinja fifine pa first squad ati TB iyo TB bampa ko sifo fine pakefo apuishisho mtuyo yare bafima ndau to hospital ku UTH.
She has since called on well-wishers as well as the social welfare department to look in the plight of this innocent girl, adding that a grandmother who is only selling samosas has been faced with challenges in taking care of her.
Tinga koti no kusuma meno ngamle muri chef yakula kula suma spooni no kuisuma kufikondo euruso ko shumwene tubikire ko no kuchesha afyo kulila ushikuonse tutwate mwafyo buteko bwatwafu ako kuri uyu mwana bare twafuirisha ko koza musunga tababomba ukuri arashupa uwaditaria ni porridge ni sawa shekansipu efyari afi.
Meanwhile, a medical practitioner, Dr. Teddy Mulenga, explains that the child might also be living with HIV and AIDS, hence the reason why her health condition has not been improving. He has since advised the family to take back the child at a health facility for further examination.
Acquired immunodeficiency syndrome, that's the likeliest cause of that. And that can explain why a child can get TB at that age. Because TB mostly attacks people with low immunity. So it could have been an HIV person, not on treatment, got TB, and I'm sure they could have tried to start treatment, but nobody followed up. That's what I suspect. The first thing to do is to go back to the hospital, but now we are dealing with a grandmother. To go back to the hospital and talk to the doctors. The doctors will take over the further investigations and treatment.
Every child is special and has the right to life and be loved, and this child is not an exemption. Prudence Jota, reporting for Cament TV News. A very sad situation there where a 2-year, 9-month-old baby has been abandoned by both a mother and a father, and apparently she's living with her grandmother. Unfortunately, when we went to cover that particular story, the grandmother just received a funeral on the Copper Belt and she had to travel. So the child was just left with the neighbors. So it's just anyone who feels the child is crying, they pick it up, then they nurse it and stuff like that, they put her back. The neighbors so far are looking after the child as the grandmother has traveled on the Copper Belt to attend a funeral. And we hope that she will be back soon and look after the child. But that's a very sad situation this morning. And the question maybe that we can ask ourselves is, why is it that it has become common for parents to abandon their children? This is not the first child that is being abandoned by parents. The increase in the number of street kids can also be attributed to the same, where we are seeing parents denying the responsibility and running away from their children. You find that sometimes even our male parents, they abandon the child and leave it with this mother who has nothing to do, and the child ends up on the street. But sometimes, in this particular case, it's the opposite. The lady was the one who started first by abandoning the child and leaving it with the father. And then the father called one of the sister-in-law, it was 16 years, to say, I need help from you. Maybe if we can meet at a particular point, I'll explain later. When she reached there, she was just given the baby, and he said, just hold her a little bit as I do something. And that's how he left and went for good. He's never been seen by the grandmother to this child, who she's apparently living with, but the father has vanished in thin air. I know he is watching what is happening around in that particular news item. If you have a heart, even a little bit, please, let's take responsibility over the children that we have, regardless of the condition that they have, because every child is a blessing. With the right medication and treatment, the child can be better. We did see Dr. Teddy Mulenga there say most of the times if a baby has tuberculosis, because they have this strong immune, it's almost impossible to have it for that long. It can be maybe the child has also some aspect of HIV and AIDS in them, but they are not being treated for that, so it keeps to eat their body. But he advised that the child should be taken to a health facility for further examination. If at all it is just TB that is stubborn, they can change the medication, and the child will have to be in hospital until she feels a little bit better. That's when they allow the child to be released. So I don't know what you have to say about that particular news item this morning. Let's get to interact. Let's get to hear what you have to say. You can send us that message on our Facebook platform, or you can call through and make your submission. Why has there been an increase in the number of parents abandoning their children? That one particular case we've just played is 1 in a million, where a lot of parents are neglecting their children. Others, kids with special a disability, we've seen they've become victims of being abandoned by their parents. Why is this being the case in our country, in Zambia, where we call each other a Christian nation, where we preach love, kindness, forgiveness, and responsibility? But today, the parents are denying responsibility over their children. So you can call and make your submissions with regards to that news item which you just played on Cament TV. What is your take this morning? Why do we have an increase in the number of parents abandoning their children? Let's get to hear what you have to say with regards to that issue. Also, talking about these matters, a particular topic of discussion today is resolving labor disputes. How do we resolve labor disputes in Zambia? What is the right channel of you airing your grievances if at all you are working for an organization and you're not satisfied with the way things are being done? We are hopeful that we will have our guests in studio to discuss that. But before we can have the guests, we are zooming into that stories that made headline in our news yesterday at this particular time. And we've just played a clip where a 2 years, 9 months old baby was abandoned. But talking about labor dispute, we did also air a story in our news yesterday where a 36-year-old man of Lusaka is nursing spine injuries 3 years after he fell off a ladder at a named fashion retail company in Lusaka. In an interview, Nicholas Kavambi explains that he was working as a visual merchandiser at Forsini retail shop located at Lusaka's Manda Hill shopping mall, where he fell off a ladder in 2019 while restocking clothes, and has been suffering a spinal problem since then, which has left him unable to work. Mr. Kavambi explains that various visits to the Ministry of Labor and Social Securities have been unfruitful, as he has been told that the company's headquarters is in South Africa and has no human resource in Zambia who can address his concerns. Meanwhile, Cament News has reached out to the accused company to get their view on the alleged occurrence. What are we talking about? Let's zoom into this story that also made headline in our news yesterday.
Various stakeholders have been observing that Zambia's labor sector is in need of serious scrutiny due to the ever-increasing number of labor disputes, most of which are never resolved. Amidst high unemployment levels in the country, many citizens jump at any employment opportunity, a scenario which concerned parties feel has led to many employers taking advantage of their employees, subjecting them to low pay and overall poor working conditions. This is the case of 36-year-old Nicholas Kavambi of Lusaka, who says he was working at Foshini Retail Company at Lusaka's Manda Hill branch as a visual merchandiser responsible for displaying the clothes when he fell off a ladder and injured his spine In 2019, Mr. Kavambi alleges that he has never been compensated or paid his dues after he could no longer work due to his injury.
Because in the Mideast, I've got my 2 children who are not okay, and I'm jobless, I'm not working, my children haven't been going to school, and I want someone to help me to come in this situation and be able to help us as a family. You know, I've worked for this company, shakwatapo criminal record yonse na libomba, and at the end of the day, it's just of common sense. For 11 years. It's a long time that I've dedicated myself to this company, and hence I want them to help me by just paying me my benefits that I've worked for, and also my salary arrears for 2 years now. I want to also look at my children's life. I'm a married man. I've got people also who depend on me. I've got my mother who's disabled, who's not okay. She's also in the village. She depends on me, the little that I earn here in town. But apparently, I'm not on any pay.
He explains that life has been hard for him and his 3 children, as neither he nor his wife work, adding that he has not received any help through the Ministry of Labour and Social Security.
This is a foreign company, so he 2 years naikara in ngangabali sere company mamon, and the labor office has already been notified about the situation. So he company ngabali sere, imagine ngabali sere company yabolera mu South Africa. This company is very active in Zambia, but this officer cannot come in and help me. Now our union wants, there is a union where I affiliate to, is called the NOCIO, Zambia National Commercial of Allied Workers. They are there behind Parliament. Naliba konka uncountable times. Na bena bali suminisha kuti hii company tule forera ku South Africa. Fama pay slips yafuma ku South Africa. Their money also by union is deducted from my pay slips from South Africa. So what's that? Naliba konka na bena every time ngawa beba at no, your employers are busy, they are busy.
The complainant explains to Cament News that he is now subjected to various medicines and cannot do any work due to his injured spine. Various calls made to the store manager identified as Mbalanji Chela could not materialize by broadcast time as the mobile phone was switched off. We will follow the story with relevant unions until justice prevails. Zipporah Mshala, Cament News, Lusaka.
There you have it. That is Mr. Nicholas Kavambi, who explains the issue that he's faced with after encountering incidents while at the place of work that has left him with a permanent solution. He is a father of 3 and having a lot of difficulties in looking after his family because he cannot do work. He can no longer work due to the accidents. Due to the accident that he encountered, he of course has been told that for this particular company they have no HR department, so it has been difficult to help him. But a lot of labor disputes in Zambia, a lot of companies have walked scot-free in a lot of labor disputes in Zambia. And the question is, what is it that we are doing wrong as a country? What are we not doing right to ensure that we resolve our own labor issues? A lot of labor issues, not just when it comes to accidents at a place of work. Sometimes there are also labor disputes when it comes to maybe salaries, conditions of service, and stuff like that. But I don't know why this has continued to be a particular case and how we can solve this as a country. The Ministry of Labour, do we really think the Ministry of Labour is doing its best to ensure that labor disputes in the country are resolved? This morning we are of course expecting a representative from the Ministry of Labour where we will be discussing how you resolve labor disputes in the country. Supposing you are faced with a challenge at a place of work, it can be maybe issues of wage, issues of service of condition and stuff like that. If you are aggrieved as employees, how do you go about it? More especially institutions that are not unionized. I think these ones have been facing a lot of incidences where we saw, I think about 2 weeks ago, Seedco, one of Zambia's biggest seed company, fired workers and instantly replaced them without even having to hear what they had to say because they demanded a bit of pay rise in the monies that they've been getting paid, and the company was not happy with that conduct, so they fired the employees and sent them away, and the following day employed other people. Why are these labor disputes continue to happen in the country and these companies have not been brought to task with regards to a lot of issues? So we are expecting, of course, someone from the Ministry of Labour, hopefully the Labour Commissioner himself, to discuss labour disputes in Zambia and how is it that they can be resolved. And then also something interesting, if you are aggrieved, how do you go about reporting these issues? I think sometimes this is where we get it wrong. What do the labour laws say with regards to when you have a labour dispute? How do you go about resolving that? Is it allowed to go on a partial strike and not report for work under the laws if you are aggrieved? I do not know, but we'll get answers to that shortly. So remember, the first item, we played a clip where a 2-year, 9-month-old baby has been abandoned by both her parents because she's living with a health complication not well known. What they know so far is she was diagnosed with tuberculosis, which has been deteriorating her health. A health condition is really bad. As we speak, the child only relies on milk shake and sour and other stuff that are light, does not eat anything that is hard. And it is, of course, a challenge on the part of the grandmother that is now looking after this child. We couldn't find her yesterday because she had gone to a funeral on the Copper Belt where she has a bereavement, and the child has just been left in the custody of the neighbors who are helping in looking after her. So also that story, you can call and make your contribution and your submissions. And also the story we've just aired on labor disputes. Why do you think we've continued to have labor disputes in the country as Zambia? Let's get to hear what you have to say. Then also yesterday, the latest report from the United Nations UN has revealed that Zambia has poor implementation of its corruption laws despite having good anti-corruption laws, paging the implementation of existing corruption laws in Zambia at only 20%. Reacting to the matter, stakeholders, among them Public and Progressive Party, RPP Acting President Keshas Akapelwa, says such reports bring to the fore matters that need to be addressed by the current administration in order to win the fight against corruption at 100%. In an interview, Mr. Akapelwa says one change that needs to be made in fighting the cancer of corruption is a holistic approach, stating that even the private sector must be examined to see what role they may have played in corruption, nothing that the anti-corruption crusade has mainly been focused on the public sector. So that is one of the stories that made headline there. UN says Zambia has poor implementation of its corruption laws despite having good anti-corruption laws. Do you agree with that? They've rated us at 20%, saying despite having these laws, its implementation has been bad. We have seen a lot of people have said corruption in Zambia is only a witch hunt against former government officials, while the real perpetrators of corruption are walking scot-free because all that political parties focus on are the former officials in government. Is that information true? We don't know, but we also know for a fact that this report was done. What am I talking about? Let's get to zoom into this story that made headline in our news yesterday.
Zambia has come under the limelight for the past 1 year for its anti-corruption crusade, not only in Africa but around the globe. A move which has been commended by various stakeholders advocating for transparency. A recently released 2021 country analysis by the United Nations shows that while the country seems to be making huge strides, implementation of anti-corruption laws is too low on paper, standing at only 20%. This has been attributed to instability in the corruption fight, as success levels have been fluctuating in various administrations. In an interview, Republican Progressive Party RPP Acting President Keshas Akapelwa, while commending the current administration, says there is need to apply more aggressiveness to reach impressive statistics on paper. Meanwhile, the RPP has also applauded the formulation of a political party called Citizens First by opposition politician Harry Kalaba.
Suffice to say, we're basically saying I think we should actually permeate more even in the private sector, because corruption is not with the public service. Corruption is everywhere. And if we can permeate more even in the private sector, this will give confidence, even to those partners that support us. 20% is not a good number. We need to get to at least maximum closing up the gap maybe to 60-70%, so that at least the confidence of the Zambian people in fighting corruption is restored as soon as possible. We welcome him and we want him to offer a different political platform that is not filled with malice, hate, and tribalism. I only hope is bringing to the fore of politics that is full of sanity.
In a separate interview, Third Liberation Movement Party President Enoch Tonga has also given his views.
We agree with the report when the UN report indicates that we lack to implement the current laws and that much has been focused on the public sector in neglecting the private sector. That is correct. It is therefore very important that one, we enact the non-deliberate corruption. Two, ensure that those who are holding public offices are corrupt-free, and that we not only focus on the public sector, but as well focus on the private sector when it comes to fight against corruption.
The political stakeholders say they long for a time when Zambia will be an icon of transparency and accountability around the world. Zipporah Mshala, Cament News, Lucy.
The latest report from the United Nations UN, which has revealed that Zambia has poor implementation of its corruption laws despite having good anti-corruption laws. Do you agree with what the UN has said, and why do you think this has been a case? We know that corruption is a cancer that keeps depriving a lot of people an opportunity to access their basic needs because resources that are made for that have been transferred to other sectors, have been used for corrupt practices which only benefit very few individuals at the expense of millions of Zambians. Do you agree that we have a poor implementation of our corruption laws despite having good anti-corruption laws? Where is it that we are failing to strike a balance as a country with regards to fighting corruption? Is it that we target the wrong people, or is it that those who involve themselves in such activities are smart, or is it that we don't maybe actually utilize technology because technology keeps a record of everything, but maybe the way we do our aspect or the way we utilize technology is not enough to help the country fight corruption? Where are we failing as a country? Let's get to hear what your comment is also with regards to this story. So we are at the segment where we are zooming into some of the stories that made headline in our news yesterday. Remember, we played a clip where a 2 years, 9 months old baby has been abandoned by both her parents because she's living with a complicated health condition. According to the grandmother, the child was diagnosed with tuberculosis, which has been a problem for quite some time. She is almost 3 but cannot sit, she cannot walk or do anything on her own without the support of others. This is a very sad development there. And the question that we're asking is, why is it that cases of child abandoning have become abundant in our country? This was rare in the past, but we are now seeing it reoccurring. This is not the first incident that we are hearing of a parent abandoning their child, but in such scenario, this is a child with a condition that we don't even understand. So what is your comment with regards to that? Then also we've played a clip where someone who's working for a South African-based company here in Zambia, based at Manda Hill store, fell from the ladder while stocking clothes and has got spinal problem. He is unable to work, but he has tried to involve various people involving his union, including his union, the Ministry of Labor, but has received less support on the basis that the company's headquarters is in South Africa. Do you agree with the notion that this person cannot be helped simply because the company's headquarters is in South Africa? How do they invest in Zambia if at all they cannot be held responsible for what they do? Where are we failing as a country when it comes to implementing our labor laws? Our phone lines are open. Let's get to hear what you have to say with regards to these stories that we are zooming in that made headline in our news yesterday. We've also played a clip where the latest report from the United Nations UN has revealed that Zambia has poor implementation of its corruption laws despite having good anti-corruption laws. This is according to the UN, where they've rated Zambia at only 20% when it comes to the implementation of corruption fighting. Is this true? And what do you think has been causing that? We also know that there is something special that is happening in our country, and that is the recruitment that is happening around. We know government has announced the recruitment of army officers. We also seen the recruitment of Zambia National Service for those in that sector, and also the recruitment of warders and wardresses who have been dropping their application, of course, at the Zambia Statistical Agency offices. And the ECZ verification of result has been characterized by numbers. A lot of people have been flocking to ECZ to have their results certified. You pay 100 kwacha and you will have your results certified. This, of course, I've seen has raised a lot of alarm, where people are saying, how come they are being made to pay 100 kwacha for the verification of results? These are some of people who've never worked. Others are just pupils who just left schools and are being asked to solicit, or rather government is soliciting for only 100 kwacha from them to have their results verified. But yesterday the ECZ did respond and said the physical verification of results, apparently for those wishing to apply in this, has been suspended, but they can do that online. There is now online verification. Remember, this online verification also worked during the time they were recruiting teachers and health workers. This was a system that was used then, and this is a system that has been reintroduced. But do you think this system is going to work or serve the purpose that it is intended to ensure that people do not get disqualified because they had challenges with online services? This is where Smart Zambia has been brought into perspective, and the Examination Council of Zambia, is working with Smart Zambia to ensure that the online verification of result is made possible. Yesterday also, the ECZ Director, Dr. Michael Chilala, did also mention that for those who will be verifying their results online, even if this closing period comes, but you submitted your verification online, you will still be allowed to submit your application. The door is not going to close until the process is done. But there's also something interesting happening. Remember, those who sat for their GCE grade 12 examinations for GCE in the June-July intake, some of them, their results are being withheld by ECZ on allegation of examination malpractice. About 69 schools, have been implicated in this, and over 300 candidates have been affected. These are people who are also looking to apply in these opportunities, but they are unable to because their results have been withheld. ECZ yesterday also spoke to this fact and says they have evidence against anyone who has been implicated in this, and until investigations are done, they are not going to release those results. What are we talking about? Let's zoom into this story that made headline in our news yesterday. Stay tuned. Examination Council of Zambia ECZ offices across the country have been one of the busiest in the last few days, as candidates have been flocking the center trying to verify their grade 12 results, as it is a requirement if one wishes to apply for recruitment in the Zambia Army, Zambia Air Force, the Zambia Correctional Service, as well as higher institutions of learning. To minimize on the traffic at ECZ offices, the council, working with Smart Zambia, has introduced an online platform where candidates can now verify their results without having to physically go to ECZ offices.
The moral of this meeting is to let the people of Zambia know that there is an option that does not require us to physically go to the centers to get verification results or to have a verified copy of the results.
Meanwhile, ECZ Director Dr. Michael Chilala says the council has signed an agreement with the Zambia Army that all those who will verify their results online but experience some delays will continue to send their application even when the application period elapses.
Advising them to make payment using either mobile money or through Bill Master at the Zanaco agents or Zanaco Bank itself. They must print the copy of the evidence of payment and attach it to the application. Then they just need to submit their application. Once they attach the copy of the evidence of payment, we will use that now to use the online verification of results system so that we can verify their results and they will also not be disadvantaged in any way.
And a group of more than 300 candidates who sat for the GCE 2022 examinations will have to miss out on the opportunities, as ECZ maintains that it has evidence of malpractice on all the schools whose results have been withheld.
Imagine you helped someone who was in the exam malpractice to become a medical doctor, and they are to conduct surgery on your mother. What do you expect? So the public needs to realize, yes, we have seen demonstrations, we've heard people saying they want their results. They should have written genuinely in the first place if they wanted the results. So we have a process we are following. We are creating every opportunity for everyone who deserves the results, but we will not be pushed to release results for people who were involved in examination malpractices. Then we will be complicit to the crime if we did that.
The use of technology has now been making it easy for the world, and Zambia should continue to tap in the space to ensure that service delivery is not disrupted. Prudence Chota, reporting for Cament TV News. There you have it. That is also one of the stories that made a headline in our news yesterday, where the Examination Council of Zambia says it has not stopped the verification of results for those intending to apply for various job opportunities, but that the service has been moved to an online platform. The Examination Council of Zambia, working with Smart Zambia, will now be verifying the results online to ensure that they decongest what we just saw. Long queues characterize ECZ offices the past few days, where thousands of people have been flocking to the council's offices to have their results physically verified, but that process has now been cancelled and taken online, like what we saw when people were applying for employment under the health and under the Ministry of Education. The 30,000 recruitment and 11,000 plus recruitment of health workers was also characterized by online verification of results. So the system has been moved to that. And of course, ECZ says this is in order to decongest their offices and also allow the process to be quickly done. But for those who submitted their papers for the verification of results, ECZ says they will continue to verify for those and will not be disadvantaged. But for those who have not done so, you have to follow the online procedure where you pay. You can pay using Zanaco Express or Zanaco offices or mobile money. Send them evidence, attach that evidence to the copy of your application and drop it at their offices, and the online verification will be done just like that. So you don't have to worry, you don't have to go to ECZ to verify your results. If you want to apply in these various fields, you can just do it online. Life has been made easy thanks to technology. Let's embrace technology to make Zambia a better place. But for those who've been affected, whose results have been withheld, ECZ also says they have evidence against those and they will not be forced to release the results. Dr. Chilala, pardon me, yesterday did say that imagine if you had someone who dubiously acquired their grade 12 result, become a doctor, and they have to perform surgery on your mother. What do you expect? They want people to genuinely acquire the results if they want to be productive in society. So they say until the grade 7 examinations, grade 9 and grade 12 internal examinations are done, that's when the council will sit and look into those issues. 69 schools have been implicated in examination malpractice for GCE 2022, and of course the results are actually being withheld for about 300, more than 300 candidates. For those, unfortunately, they'll have to miss out on these opportunities that are in the country, apparently, including applying in higher institutions of learning until their issues are resolved. For others, they will be barred from taking examinations in the next 2 years if at all you are completely implicated in this issue. So let us avoid examination malpractice at all costs. For those watching us in different localities and platforms, if you are intending to write your exams, please stay away from examination malpractices so that you do not become a victim of what has just happened. So I wish everyone who has been affected all the best, even as you wait on the result. Remember, this is not the end of the road for you. There is still hope and there is still a way. Where there is a will, there is a way. You do not have to think negative about your life. This is not the end of the road. Actually, this is just the beginning, because every process in life is a lesson and you will one day testify to what has happened. So let's keep the faith running. Talk to someone if you feel depressed. Let's get to interact. If you feel you are going through a difficult time. We've seen a lot of suicidal cases also. Please, let's talk to someone, unlike taking your own life, because that in itself is not a solution to the problem that you have. So even as we wait for our guests to settle, we are going to take a short breather. The wait already continues. We are expecting the Labour Commissioner, Givens Muntangwa, to join us on the program, and we are discussing how to resolve labor disputes. So we know that we have a lot of labor disputes in our country that needs to be resolved, and we will be discussing that on the program this morning. So stay tuned to Cament TV, and if you have questions pertaining the labor issues in our country, please, this is a platform where you can just make that submission and contribution. Pardon me. So for now, we are going to take a short breather, and we will be back. See you on the other side.
For immediate coverage of any breaking or latest news in Zambia and around the world on Cament Television, call the numbers on your screen. Cament Television, bringing to your screens fair news, impartial news, credible and reliable news all the time. Get the whole truth on Cament World News. Cament Television, not just another channel.
Nalichulile mwe bana bandi Ine nalichulile mwe bana bandi Bakufwa ya fe mwikale wino Bakufwa ya fe mwikale wino inena lichulile mwe bana bandi imoshalelia mwe bana bandi bakufwa yafe mwikale wino bakufwa yafe mwikale wino awe inena kana nikasumnyomulopa awe nakana nikasumnyomulopa awe nakana nikasumnyomulopa awe nakana nikale kabana bakachule nikale kabana bakachule nakana nikale kabana bakachule nikale kabana bakachule nakana mukasungane Zambia wino mukasungane Zambia wino nami chichile chalo ichamutende nganshi nalilwilile nkomdo pakupoko utungwa ichibeimba chitila mwikala patalala mwina patalalika mwikalete ntulubuti bali baimwe nakane pasase bali imwe mumulukane Zambia hane usulule mali luhanile luhanile mali luhanile
One Zambia, one nation should forever be your motto. Remain united as one, created in God's image. And above all, remember, love your neighbor as you love yourself.
Mukasungane Zambia wino mukasungane Zambia wino mukasungane Zambia nati Zambia mukasungane Zambia tekwesha kulwa mukasungane Zambia umutende na mishila musungane Zambia wino ine mumweo wandina lisalo kuwombela bayawe nangunaya nekwaya nesakatile mwawombeni ine mumweo wandina lisalo kuwombela bayawe nangunaya nekwaya nesakatile mwawombeni awe nekwaya nesakatile nekwaya nesakatile mwawombeni nangunaya wakamwikelo mwingilo wa muta nekwaya nesakalande mwawombeni nangunaya awe nekwaya nesakatile
Thank you so much for still staying tuned to Cament TV. Remember, Cament TV is not just another channel. That was a short breather that we took just to allow our guests to settle. But I know you're wondering where the guest is. We are expecting the Labour Commissioner, Givens Muntengwa, to join us in studio soon. He is downstairs, I am told, and just a little bit settling in to ensure that we discuss a little bit on how to resolve labour disputes in Zambia. We have seen a lot of happenings with regards to the labour sector in our country, where sometimes employees are dismissed without even giving them a notice by their employees. Then also, how is it that you report labour dispute when you have a dispute or you are aggrieved at your place of work? Do you just give up like that? Do you just go on a strike? What is the procedure? How do you go about doing these things? This is a topic of discussion this morning. Labour Commissioner Givens Muntengwa is expected in studio in the last quarter of the program. That is what we will be discussing. But shout out to everyone watching us on different platforms. That is on our Facebook page. We've seen Edson Muyenda Zulu there saying, I'm watching from Eastern. Thank you so much, Muyenda, for watching. We've also seen Tembo John Willard there saying, it's because of Unjala has gone high. I'm sure you are making a reference to a story that we aired earlier where a 2 years, 9 months old baby has been abandoned by her parents. Right now, she is living at her grandmother's place where she is being taken care of. Both the mother and the father have left this particular child who has a certain health complication from what we know. So we've seen that Miriam there, Musakanya, says it's because of poverty, lack of good jobs in Zambia. Can these be the contributing factors why we are seeing parents abandoning their children? And then maybe just a question in the first place, why have a child if at all you cannot take care of them? Why give birth to a child if at all you cannot take care of that particular child? If you not have the capacity, why in the first place should you get married and begin to have children? Remember, kids are always innocent in the things that we do, but the mistake of the parents, always the child has to bear the consequence. This is not the Zambia that we know, or rather the Zambia that we should live in. So that was one of the stories that made headline, and these comments are speaking to that. Thank you so much for everyone watching us on our different platforms this morning. But remember, the topic of discussion is resolving labor disputes. How do we resolve labor dispute? Our guest this morning is the Labor Commissioner, Givens Muntengwa, and he is going to help us in the last quarter of this program to just discuss those particular issues. So even as we allow the Commissioner to settle in, we are going to, of course, expect you, the viewer, who've got questions out there, to just call and make those submissions, contributions, and questions that you have. I know labor issues in Zambia have been quite cardinal. And remember, again, earlier in the program, we did play a clip of a 36-year-old man of Lusaka who is nursing a spinal injury 3 years after he fell off a ladder at a named fashion retail company in Lusaka. In an interview, Nicholas Kabimbi explained that he was working as a visual merchandiser at Fosini retail shop located at Lusaka's Vanda Hill shopping mall when he fell off a ladder in 2019 while restocking clothes, and has been suffering a spinal problem since then, which has left him unable to walk. He has been unable to fend for his family, is now having to rely on his partner, who's unfortunately also not doing anything. So he has involved the Labour Office on this matter, but has received no help on allegations that the company's head office is in South Africa. And so it's been difficult to fight those issues. But do you agree with that explanation? Of course, even the union that this person subscribes to has been told the same thing, to say they've been faced with a number of challenges in convincing the company because its headquarters is not in Zambia. But what's the essence in the first place of investing in the country if at all you cannot stick to the labor laws that we have in this country? These and many more issues will be discussed on the program, even as we allow our guest to settle this morning. So those who've got questions and contributions, you can just call and make those submissions. But as we allow the guests to settle, we are going to take a short breather and we will meet on the other side. Stay tuned to Cament TV.
For immediate coverage of any breaking or latest news in Zambia and around the world on Cament Television, call the numbers on your screen. Cament Television, bringing to your screens fair news, impassioned news, credible and reliable news all the time. Get the whole truth on Cament World News. Cament Television, not just another channel.
And bananas.
Working, waiting, this what you've been praying for.
Thank you so much for staying tuned to Cament TV. Remember, Cament TV is not just another channel. Our guest is finally in studio, and we will directly dive into the interview this morning. So our topic of discussion this morning is, of course, resolving labor disputes. How is it that you resolve labor disputes if you have a grievance at your place of work? In studio this morning, I am joined by the Ministry of Labor Commissioner, Mr. Givens Montengwa. Sir, good morning and welcome to the program.
Good morning, Prentice. How are you?
Fine, thank you. We've waited for you like the longer waits.
Apologies.
Yeah, no problem. No, I understand. I know there's quite a number of people who've been following this program on our different platforms. That is also including on our Facebook platform, and of course, I know that they are hoping to hear what you have to say with regards to the labor disputes and how you can resolve them in our country. So maybe before we dive into that, just a little bit about the mandate of the Ministry of Labor. As a Ministry of Labor, what is your mandate as a ministry? Maybe just a little bit talk about that.
In terms of a summarized mandate, we of course ensure that there is industrial harmony. But outside that, when we start looking at other pillars, we are the ones who register unions. We register employers' associations or federations. We also register recognition agreements. This is an agreement where the parties, that is to say the employer and the unions, will set out the manner in which they will conduct business concerning collective bargaining processes. And what is born out of the collective bargaining process is a collective agreement, which we also register. The minister approves and Labor Commissioner registers. We also have mandate to ensure that the Employment Code Act or the labor laws are complied with. And under that specific act, we have powers to direct employers to do certain things. We also do mediation in terms of contracts of employment, where we bring parties together and try to see if they can agree or formulate an agreement which we evidence ourselves. So in summary, I think that's what we do as Ministry of Labour. We are also the ones who chair through the Minister the Tripartite Consultative Labour Council, which is arranged around tripartism amongst the employers' representatives, the unions, and the ministry, and Labour Commissioner is secretary to that council. This council is there to advise government on labour matters and seek to find solutions to different problems that affect the sector. So in simple terms, I think that's what we do as a ministry. Yeah.
Quite a mammoth task that your ministry, of course, is given or mandated to do. So as a ministry, do you sometimes conduct inspections in these companies that sometimes come to invest in Zambia? We've seen a lot of companies where people say the companies do not follow the right labor laws. So as a ministry, do you take time to just visit some of these companies?
Yes, you may wish to note that actually inspections are conducted on a daily basis. We have an inspections unit within the Office of the Labour Commissioner, which is solely responsible for these inspections to companies, to employers. We conduct these inspections based on a weekly schedule. Which is approved by my office, and depending on the nature of the problem, you've of course sometimes seen that we suspend operations and we charge those administrative penalties, because our mandate is prescribed by the law, and we have to ensure that we work within the four corners of the law, just as we wish to see the employers and employees work within the four corners of the law. So it is an issue of people knowing what the mandate of the ministry is, because sometimes they go overboard to demand intervention from the ministry in matters that the ministry does not have the requisite or necessary powers to intervene. For example, the ministry has no powers to direct the employer to increase salaries, because that space is for unions or employees themselves to be able to negotiate with the employer. Yeah, so indeed we do inspections.
I like that part which you've said that as a ministry you do not bargain for employees to increase wages for their, for employers to increase wages for their employees. This brings me maybe to this question. Just a few weeks ago we did see a scenario where a particular seed company instantly fired employees and replaced them when they decided to engage them over the issues of wages. So they said, no, we engaged you at first and you did not hear us. So they did a lot of, a bit of saying, we are not going to enter the offices until you address us on this issue, because it's been quite some time. And the company said, you can't do such a conduct. So they fired them and instantly replaced them. So maybe the question is, as a ministry, how is it that people are supposed to go about when they are aggrieved? Like, for example, in a company, I've got an aggrievement with regards to maybe wages. How am I supposed to go about it? If at all I am not unionized, I do not belong to any union, but we feel we are being exploited by the company. How are we supposed to go about solving that issue?
First and foremost, I think it's a requirement under the Employment Code Act that each employer must come up with a grievance procedure which sets out the necessary structures of engagement within an organization. So administratively, the law requires that each employer does that. And if they don't do that, obviously they are subject and liable to an administrative penalty if we come to hear about that. And then secondly, when you talk in terms of employee grievances, if the employees are represented, before they can go out to protest or have a sit-in kind of a protest, strike, or that the law requires the two parties to declare a dispute, meaning to say they have failed to reach an amicable solution. And at that point, the law guides that the parties must seek the services of an arbitrator. And if the arbitrator fails to sort out the issues, then there are two options. Either they seek to reach out to the employees to conduct a strike ballot, so that if the employees vote for a strike ballot, then we can have a legal strike. On the other hand, there's also the option of going to court. And I must mention that for essential services workers, or workers doing essential services in hospitals or that, those don't have the option of going to the mediator, to the arbitrator rather. But the only exercisable option is to go to the courts of law, so that the courts of law will make determination on whether or not they should go on strike. And then failure to comply with those procedures set out of the law, you find that the law makes it an offense for an employee to, or someone to incite others to go on a strike or that. And it is for that reason that even employers in their disciplinary codes, they've made it a point to include a provision to the effect that if an employee fails to comply with this procedure of going on a strike, then they will face the disciplinary action. And I have seen us sometimes where, because ours really is to balance the relationship between the employer and the employee. So the employees, when they decide to proceed on strike without following the procedures, I think we have not shied away from telling them to say, you are now becoming susceptible to any disciplinary action by the employer. You have made yourself vulnerable. Can you go back to work as you engage the employee using the structures that are within the organization? Reach out to the union so that you follow the law, because without following the law, you cannot expect to escape liability, which may in fact end up at you being dismissed. So it is unfortunate, of course, that such a situation happened at Zamsid. Of course, employers must not be heavy-handed. They must assess the situation, explain to the employees the procedures of the law, and try to sort out the issues in a manner that shows there's a relationship between the two parties, because the utmost important thing is that the company must receive equal efforts, positive efforts from both the employer and the employee, so that the company survives and is able to maintain the employee and is able to get profits from its business, and the employer is able to grow that business. So both parties must come to the realization that they must act responsibly, and they must not bring civil strife. They must not bring anarchy. They must engage, and engagement is one of the pillars of decent work agenda. So it must be promoted. Social dialogue must be promoted.
But Commissioner, don't you think this somehow disadvantages the employee, pardon me? Because if I have to take my boss to court, the process that is involved and all that, don't you think on the other hand it disadvantages the employee? Because even the process of taking someone to court is quite expensive. So instead of me being at work, me and my bosses are in court instead of being at work, that somehow can also attract penalties. Maybe that's why some people shun away from reporting these issues. So don't you think the procedure somehow is too long?
In the ordinary scheme of things, it shouldn't be. So we are talking about, first and foremost, worker education. We are talking about sensitizing the employers, because the law is very clear on the matter. Courts have guided that it is not a dismissible offense for an employee to reach out to the labor office, for example, to complain about the conditions, or to seek to find out the proper guidance relating to matters of employment. Rather, an employee who does so is merely asserting the right to be able to be put in the know regarding the certain matters around employment. So employers must embrace an employee who seeks to find out what is right under the prevailing circumstances. But this happens because employers are ignorant. Ministry of Labor is not there to crush the employers, neither is it there to crush the employees. It's there to ensure that there is harmony. And that's why when you look at the Act gives us two most important responsibilities, talking about employer-employee relationship under the Employment Code Act. So if the employer contravenes any provision of the Act, Section 10 empowers Labor Commissioner's Office to be able to come up with any intervention measures, directive or corrective measures, which the employer is mandated to comply with, failure to which the employer can be cited for an offense under Section 10, subsection 8. So in terms of the law, if it's a breach of any of the provisions, we have the right to give directives or order the employer to close premises and employees will remain on a salary. That's the first one. Then the second one is when you look at Section 121, in terms of a dispute arising from a contract, under that provision, we are merely mediators, meaning to say the parties themselves must be able to find the solution to the problem as we superintend and guide them. In that regard, therefore, in terms of a contract, we don't have powers to either close, suspend operations of an employer or the employer commits an offense. No. When we fail to settle the dispute, the same provision, 121, states that we can advise the complainant to proceed to court. And when you look at the intention of the Industrial Relations Court then, because now you have a division of the High Court, it's not an Industrial Relations Court. The intention was that it must be able to cater for even the indigents. They should be able to bring up matters, and then the processes to which they receive evidence, adjudication processes, all that must not be so strict to an extent of disadvantaging the illiterates, the people who don't have the money. So even the costs were to be kept at the minimum level possible. So it was not meant to place those who may not afford in a position that they will not even be able to take their cases. Rather, it was there to ensure that there was justice within the labor sector. So the process, therefore, is trying to promote, the process of engagement is trying to promote that employer-employee relationship, so that as you engage different people, you go to this arbitrator. The arbitrator will be able to look at the matter and give his or her decision, so that by so doing, the two parties will begin to realize where they would have gone wrong and then comply with those decisions. So the process itself, being exhaustive, is to ensure that it goes through different stages, so that at the end of the day, you don't, for example, accuse the arbitrator, you don't accuse labor office as being compromised, because different stages would have been engaged, different people would have been engaged. So the process is necessary for purposes of ensuring that the decisions are checked. If a labor officer, for example, makes a wrong decision, you still have the right to check that with the courts of law, if you are talking in terms of those directives. So at the end of the day, it's a necessary evil. Yes, the process might be long, but it's meant to ensure that there is fairness. It's meant to ensure that the people who are complainants would see and open their eyes, say, oh, we're told this at the Labour Office, the courts are telling us this. I think this is the correct position.
Commissioner, we've seen a lot of complaints that have come from people to say the Office of the Labour is not helping us. What are the greatest challenges that you're facing as a ministry when it comes to these labour disputes in these organizations? Is it that there's a gap misinformation, or there is a gap in terms of the dissemination of information with regards to what issues the Labour Ministry is supposed to handle?
You are right. I think there is an information gap that we have realized. For example, there is the issue of minimum wages, and if you are on Facebook already, people will be posting, when are the minimum wages coming out? The ministry is not doing that. It's doing nothing. Yeah, so firstly, talking about the minimum wages, if I can answer it from that angle, people don't realize that it's not every employee who falls within minimum wages. If you are unionized, you don't fall within minimum wages.
Okay.
Because your union is at liberty to come up with terms and conditions of service through the process of bargaining with the employer. And whatever they come up with is not meant to be compared with what is sitting under the minimum wages. No. The law is very clear. The courts on a number of occasions have pronounced themselves, and they still continue to pronounce themselves. So that understanding is not there, because you find even unions trying to queue up for minimum wages, like unions in the mining sector. You have 7 unions, almost everyone is unionized, but they still say, oh, we want a minimum wage in the mining sector. So what they don't realize is that when there's a minimum wage, and if for some reason the minimum wage becomes attractive than what they are negotiating for, so there will be a migration of their members so that they become free riders, so that they disengage from the union, and then you wake up one day where the unions will have no members. That was not the intention of why the law provided for unionism. Unionism is meant to bring free bargaining. So that's what they don't realize. So unions are ignorant, employees are ignorant, they think everyone is entitled to minimum wages. Minimum wages are only meant for employees who are in sectors where it is difficult for them to come together, either form a union or belong to a union. Because forming a union, you need 50 people. Okay? Then in terms of a recognition agreement, you need 25 employees to be recruited by the union under that employer. And on the other hand, the employer must recruit 25 in order for that employer to be registered. So that information is lacking first and foremost now. Even the process of coming up with a minimum wage is also information that is lacking out there, because they think that the minister just wakes up and promulgates the minimum wage. No, it's not like that. It's regulated by the law. There's what we call the Labour Advisory Committee. And this Labour Advisory Committee consists of employers' representatives, the unions, and government representatives. So when they sit, they then receive submissions from sector players to say, this is what we want. And by the way, even before they sit, they will have to engage a consultant. For example, we engaged Zambia, ZIPA, Zambia Institute of Policy Analysis and Research, so that they would look at the prevailing minimum wages and to what extent they should be adjusted, perhaps without going ahead of the ministry and the Honorable Minister. I can gladly say that that was done, and as we speak, the committee, the Labour Advisory Committee, is at Mika trying to put together the general order, minimum wages, shop workers, domestic workers, transport sector, and the agriculture sector. So it's a process. It's not Labour Commissioner who determines minimum wages. It's not Ministry of Labour that determines minimum wages. It's the workers' representatives together with the employers and government. Because at the end of the day, you don't want a company to be opened up just to fend for the employees. And conversely, you don't want the employer to just recruit employees and then pay them peanuts, and take all the profits. So you have to find that perfect poise. And how do you find it? It means there have to be a research. So there's no understanding. There's abuse. People are abusing the ministry. People are abusing everyone. They are posting nasty things, profanities on Facebook without realizing the processes. So there is that aspect, information gap.
Information gap.
They expect too much from wrong officers without knowing how the law is structured. And that's why in the other last tripartite consultative labor council, the ministry proposed the establishment of a labor institute so that we can begin to orient the employees out there, the workers, and everyone in the labor sector, so that they know who does what. Because if we are there to administer the law, no matter how good the idea is, we cannot embrace it if we don't have jurisdiction. Remember, the law is about jurisdiction. It only gives you certain obligations. Your jurisdiction is limited to an extent. You can't go beyond it. Otherwise, you'll be acting illegally.
Of course, we are in studio joined by the Labor Commissioner, Mr. Givens Montengwa, and we are discussing how to resolve labor disputes. I know we've run out of time, and of course my timekeeper there is giving me a signal. Maybe, Commissioner, as we come to the dying end of the program, just in summary, we have seen a lot of influx of our friends from outside who are coming to take up certain positions in companies without them even being advertised. I know just last week you visited one of the cement companies where you heard reports that 16 Zambian workers had resigned just the few months the new management took over office. Why have we been having these issues where people are coming from outside without these positions even being advertised and they are taking them up? I know the Ministry of Labor, Ministry of Commerce and other ministries, just again a few weeks ago, I think 3 or 4 weeks ago, they visited Sinoma and it was the same scenario. So where are we failing as a country, and where are these permits for those who are coming from outside being gotten from when they come in the country?
I think again it's the information gap, because you may wish to note that the Employment Code Act caters for that aspect under Section 14. It provides that priority where a vacancy arises must be given to Zambians, where Zambians have the skill to do that job. Only when Zambians don't have the skill or the necessary expertise should an employer reach out to foreign nationals to come and work. And then under the Zambia Development Agents Act, they are given a number, I think, of 5 when they invest a certain amount of money. So outside that 5, which they are given by the Zambia Development Agents, the company is not at liberty to just wantonly engage foreigners, bring them within the undertaking. No, it shouldn't be. So what we are doing as a ministry, when we find that a company has engaged a bigger number of expatriates, the first thing we do is to ask for the adverts where they're advertised to show evidence that Zambians did not possess the requisite qualifications. If we find that there's no evidence, then ultimately, because those contracts would have been entered in breach of the law, then they avoid, because the law is clear that it shall not happen where Zambians have the necessary skills. So we immediately write to immigration to revoke the work permits so that Zambians can be recruited. I think that's the intervention that the ministry does. And like I had earlier said, we use Section 10. We give the directives, because at that point, the company is not at liberty to just employ whoever they want.
Do you work with the immigration office to see who comes in the country when they're taking up these positions? Like, do you monitor them when they come just in the country, what they are coming to do?
Not entirely, because, you know, the Immigration and Deportation Act empowers the Director General of Immigration and the officers working under that office to have those overriding powers to allow foreign nationals to come in the country. And perhaps that's where we seem to have a gap, because ordinarily, I think these people who are applying for jobs should first be given a green light by Ministry of Labor before they are given these permits. I think it's one area where we have to have a one government approach, where the employment code is not made redundant, or where we don't begin to work in reverse and correct that which should be corrected even before it happens. I think those are the interventions that we are engaging immigration to ensure that we comply with the necessary laws, because the laws, once enacted by Parliament, they must be respected by everyone. No one is above the law. Companies must not circumvent those laws which have been passed by Parliament.
Labour Commissioner Givens Muntengwa was our guest this morning, and we were discussing how to resolve labor disputes. I know we've run out of time, but this is where we have to close the program. Hopefully, sir, when we extend the invitation, even again next time, you will be available just like you were today.
Not a problem. We are so grateful to be given this space. It assists us enlighten the labor sector out there about issues that affect the labor sector.
Yeah, I know a lot of people maybe would have liked to ask questions and interact, but we couldn't do that because of time. But hopefully when we have the commissioner next time, we will, of course, allow you, the viewer out there, to just call and make those submissions and contributions. To everyone who's been watching us on our different platforms, including on our Facebook page, we appreciate your company. I've seen quite a number of messages that are coming in. Unfortunately, we were unable to read them due to time, but we have taken note of all the submissions that have been made on the breakfast show this morning. Till next time, from me, Prudence Chota, and the entire Cament TV production team, and my guest, the commissioner from the Ministry of Labor, it's bye for now, and God bless you. See you on the other side.